Pay attention to 17-year-old Tanisha Williams as she walks into the home of a man she trusted more than anyone in the world, her favorite cousin. This house had security cameras that would capture something so disturbing, investigators would spend months piecing together the nightmare. Tanisha had less than 2 hours to live because Mark Davis, 23, a man she'd known since childhood, someone who drove her to get late-night food and talked about her dreams, was waiting for her to walk inside his house. That night, Tanisha planned to text her boyfriend goodnight and finish her college applications. That night, Marcus planned to betray her in the worst way imaginable. This is the story of a January evening in Detroit that destroyed a family forever. Last time I heard from her, she texted me she was heading out with Mark around 11. That was it. Nothing after midnight. Tanisha Williams' voice trembled when she called the Detroit Police Department's East Precinct on January 5, 2022. The single mother of 4 hadn't heard from her eldest daughter in over 12 hours, and every instinct screamed that something was catastrophically wrong. Tanisha Williams was supposed to be predictable. The high school senior at Cass Technical High School always answered her phone, always checked in with her mama, and always stayed connected with her boyfriend Darnell D. Mitchell. But after leaving their home on Detroit's west side around 10:50 p.m. on January 4th, after sending that simple text to Darnell saying, "On my way, baby," Tanisha vanished into the Motor City night, like smoke disappearing into cold winter air. Tanisha. But here's what Shanice didn't know yet. The security camera footage that would surface days later showed Tanisha walking into Marcus's apartment, smiling, laughing, completely trusting. The same footage never showed her walking back out. At first, Shanice tried to stay calm. Tanisha had run away twice before. Once at 16 when she'd had enough of her mother's strict rules about curfew, fleeing to her grandmother's house on the east side. The second time, frustrated about not being allowed to get a job, she'd disappeared for 3 days, eventually found at a friend's house in Southfield. Both times, Tanisha came home apologetic but resentful. She was a teenager testing boundaries, pushing against the constraints of a mother who worked double shifts as a home health aide and demanded respect, responsibility, and check-ins. But this time felt different to Shanice in her bones. Tanisha had worked her evening shift at Buffalo Wild Wings in Dearborn. She'd come home, changed into her favorite hoodie and leggings, and actually asked permission, to hang out with her cousin Marcus. "He's picking me up to get Coney dogs, Mama. We'll be back by 1, Tanisha had said, kissing Shanice's cheek. Shanice trusted Marcus completely. She'd watched him grow up alongside Tanisha. He was family. What Shanice didn't know. Marcus had been texting Tanisha for months, messages that crossed lines family members should never cross. Over 4,000 texts that police would later uncover. Messages that painted a disturbing picture of manipulation and obsession. The text message came from Darnell around 8 a.m. on January 5th. Had Miss Shanice heard from Tanisha? Because he couldn't reach her anymore. The last message he'd received came at exactly midnight. 3 simple letters that now haunt everyone who knew her. "On my way. On my way." But Tanisha never made it to Darnell's house, 6 blocks away. Calls went straight to voicemail. Messages throughout the early morning sat undelivered, trapped in digital limbo. Finally, at 8 a.m., Darnell sent a message that captured his growing dread. "Tanisha, you alive? This ain't funny far." Followed by, "Answer yo phone, this the worst thing ever." Shanice immediately called Marcus Davis. If anyone knew where Tanisha was, it would be him. They'd been close since they were kids, running through Shanice's mama's backyard during family cookouts, sharing inside jokes at Thanksgiving, practically inseparable. Or so Shanice thought. Marcus's response stopped her cold, and the lie he told in that moment would unravel into one of Detroit's most disturbing cases of family betrayal. Marcus's voice on the phone sounded genuinely confused. He hadn't seen Tanisha, he claimed. In fact, he insisted he hadn't seen or spoken to his little cousin in over a year, maybe closer to 2 years. Shanice's mind reeled. How could that be possible? She'd watched Marcus pull up in her driveway just 2 weeks ago for Christmas. She'd hugged him, fed him her famous mac and cheese, watched him and Tanisha head out together at least once or twice a month for the past year. Marcus pressed her with questions. How often had Tanisha been claiming to hang out with him? When Shanice confirmed it was regular, at least twice monthly, Marcus's tone shifted to frustration. "Auntie, that's crazy. Tanisha been using my name to sneak around. That ain't safe. She probably been seeing some dude who lives near my spot and using me as her alibi. He even offered evidence to support his theory. Tanisha shared her location with Darnell, a fact born from Darnell's admitted jealousy and trust issues. That location data placed her across the street from Marcus's apartment building at 11:24 p.m. on January 4th. Darnell, ever vigilant about tracking his girlfriend, had screenshot the location pin at that exact time. So Marcus's explanation seemed plausible. Maybe Tanisha was seeing someone else on his street. Maybe she'd been lying to everyone. There was just one problem with this theory. It was a complete lie, and Marcus knew it. Detroit police weren't exactly rushing to help. Shanice's missing person report hit a wall of bureaucratic indifference almost immediately. "Ma'am, I'm going to be honest with you," the officer at the East Precinct told her bluntly. "We're treating this as a runaway situation. Your daughter has a history. Most of these kids come home in a couple days." The officer's dismissive tone made Shanice's blood boil, but she understood the statistics. In a city where violent crime claimed headlines and resources were stretched thin, a teenager with a documented history of running away wasn't the priority. Receiving little support from law enforcement, Shanice took matters into her own hands. Family rallied, aunties from the church, uncles from the auto plants, cousins from across 7 Mile and 8 Mile. They printed 500 flyers with Tanisha's face, her bright smile shining in her senior portrait. They posted them on every corner from Livernois to Woodward, from the Greektown Casino to the Rensen downtown. They held rallies outside the precinct. They spoke to anyone who would listen. But while the family searched desperately, Marcus was deleting evidence, ring camera footage, text messages, location data, anything that proved Tanisha had been inside his apartment that night. Local news picked up the story. Channel 4, Channel 7, they all ran segments showing Shanice's tear-streaked face pleading into cameras. "We need your eyes," she begged the city. "If anybody's seen my baby girl, please call. The police need your help. We need your help." The Black community in Detroit mobilized the way they always did when one of their own was missing, with fierce determination and zero faith that the system would deliver justice without pressure. Meanwhile, officers eventually made their way to Marcus Davis's apartment on the city's northwest side, near the Lodge Freeway. They found him there with his longtime girlfriend, Kiara Thompson. Marcus, a 23-year-old father of 2 young boys, ages 1 and 2, seemed cooperative when police knocked. He invited officers inside to look around, to search, to see for themselves that Tanisha wasn't there. His story remained consistent with what he'd told Shanice. He hadn't seen his little cousin in over a year, maybe closer to 2. He claimed it was Tanisha's mother and her boyfriend who seemed fixated on this idea that she'd been with him. "I even offered to show Auntie Shanice my ring camera footage to prove Tanisha was never here," Marcus explained to officers, his voice rising with apparent exasperation. "But this whole thing got me uncomfortable as hell. You know Tanisha is known to run away, right? Like she's done it 4 times. Every time she at some dude's house. Her mama knows this." What the officers didn't know yet, Marcus had deleted critical hours of that ring camera footage. Gaps existed for the entire night of January 4th into the early morning of January 5th. Shanice had noticed those gaps when Marcus showed her the footage, but police hadn't pressed hard enough. The officers found nothing suspicious in their initial search. No signs Tanisha had been there. No blood, no phone, no struggle. They listened, while Marcus explained his frustrations over being dragged into drama caused by a 17-year-old cousin he'd barely spoken to in years. The officers left, seemingly satisfied. But Tanisha Williams knew better. She'd seen Marcus in her driveway. She'd hugged him, she'd fed him. She knew he was lying through his teeth. The question burning in her mind was simple and terrifying. Why? Sometimes, the simplest solution cracks a case wide open. If Tanisha's location data placed her across from Marcus's apartment building, why not check the neighbors' cameras? When investigators finally pursued this obvious lead, the footage told a story Marcus Davis desperately wanted to keep buried forever. At approximately 11:15 p.m. on January 4th, a doorbell camera from across the street captured something damning. A black Dodge Charger, the car registered to Marcus Davis, pulled into his building's parking lot. 2 individuals emerged from the vehicle, clearly visible under the streetlight. One male in a puffy black coat and Timbs, one female in a gray hoodie and black leggings. The resolution was clear enough to identify Tanisha's distinctive braids, and the way she walked, that slight bounce in her step, her mama would recognize anywhere. They walked toward the building entrance together, laughing, comfortable. Tanisha trusted Marcus completely. Now, Marcus had driven his girlfriend Kiara to her overnight shift at the Amazon Fulfillment Center in Romulus just before 11 p.m. that night. She worked the graveyard shift, 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., packing boxes to make ends meet, while Marcus worked sporadic construction jobs. The second individual entering the apartment building with Marcus at 11:15 p.m. couldn't have been Kiara. Phone location data confirmed what the camera revealed. The two people entering Marcus's building that night were Marcus Davis and Tanisha Williams. The camera footage never showed Tanisha leaving through the front entrance. But at 1 a.m., that same neighbor's camera captured something that made investigators' blood run cold. Marcus's Charger pulled out of the parking lot slowly, then reversed back in with precision. The trunk now faced the back of the building, hidden from the street view, concealed in shadows between dumpsters. Several minutes passed. The camera timestamp showed 1:03 a.m. when the Charger's brake lights illuminated again. Then the vehicle drove off into the Detroit night. It returned less than 10 minutes later, timestamp 1:12 a.m. The trunk lid remained closed, but something about the car's suspension looked different. It sat higher, lighter. Whatever Marcus had been carrying was gone. Search warrants came swiftly once the neighbor's footage surfaced. Inside Marcus's apartment, investigators found it suspiciously clean, too clean. The overwhelming smell of bleach hung in the air despite winter cold coming through cracked windows. The apartment had clearly been scrubbed down thoroughly, but bleach can't erase everything. Officers carefully itemized and examined every inch of the space. In the living room, luminol testing revealed blood spatter patterns on the wall behind the couch, patterns consistent with cast-off from a swinging motion. Someone had cleaned it, but luminol doesn't lie. More blood traces appeared on the bathroom tile grout, in the bedroom, carpet fibers near the closet, and on the inside trunk lining of Marcus's Charger. That's when law enforcement brought in the canine units. The cadaver dogs indicated clearly at the trunk of Marcus's car, hitting on it repeatedly. The unmistakable scent of human decomposition lingered there, invisible to humans but absolutely clear to trained animals. The trunk contained several suspicious items: a dark stain that field-tested presumptive positive for blood, carpet fibers that didn't match the vehicle's original interior, and most damning, a single acrylic nail, purple with rhinestones, that matched the set Tanisha had gotten done at the salon 3 days before she disappeared. Shanice confirmed it instantly when investigators showed her a photo. "That's my baby's nail." She was so proud of those nails, showed them off to everybody. On January 19th, 2022, accompanied by a lawyer who happened to be a family friend, Marcus voluntarily sat down with Detroit police detectives. The evidence against him had become overwhelming, undeniable. It was time, his lawyer must have advised, to get ahead of the narrative, to control the story before it controlled him. Marcus offered what he claimed was the truthful version of events from that night, and the story he told was calculated to minimize his culpability while admitting just enough to explain the evidence. Yes, he'd picked up Tanisha from her house around 10:50 that evening, Marcus admitted. Yes, he'd brought her back to his apartment. He put his 2 young sons to bed upstairs. They'd been watching cartoons when he arrived, then joined Tanisha downstairs in the living room. They talked, Marcus explained, about normal teenage stuff. Her improving relationship with her mother, her boyfriend Darnell, plans for prom in the spring, her dreams of getting her own apartment after graduation, college applications to Wayne State. Then, Marcus claimed, they smoked some weed together. He'd gotten some good bud from his boy, and Tanisha wanted to try it. She got sleepy afterward, her head tilted back as she appeared to nod off while sitting upright on his couch. Marcus said he went into the kitchen to grab another beer. When he returned 15 to 20 minutes later, something was wrong, terribly wrong. Her pulse was real faint, Marcus told detectives, his voice steady and matter-of-fact. Then I couldn't feel a heartbeat at all. I tried CPR like they show on TV, but nothing. She was just gone. Detectives pressed him hard. How did he know Tanisha was actually dead? According to his story, this 17-year-old girl had inexplicably and abruptly stopped breathing after smoking marijuana, something millions of people do without dying. But was she truly gone? Or had Marcus simply assumed and panicked? She wasn't breathing, Marcus insisted. Her heartbeat was like, I couldn't read it, couldn't feel nothing, no pulse at the neck or wrist. So yeah, I'd say she was dead, definitely dead. Instead of calling 911, instead of trying to save his little cousin, Marcus said he panicked. Not knowing how she died, fearing it would appear as though he'd killed her, especially with his construction job under the table and his child support situation, he made a choice that would haunt the case forever. I put her in my trunk, he told detectives calmly, and I took her out to Highland Park, to them dumpsters behind the old Chrysler plant, and I put her inside one of them big trash bins. Then I left. The timeline matched disturbingly well with the neighbor's camera footage and cell phone records. Marcus claimed Tanisha had been at his place for roughly 2 hours before she died, placing the time around 1 a.m. Cell phone records showed Tanisha's device dropped off the network at exactly 1 a.m., the same moment she stopped responding to messages from Darnell. Marcus also claimed he hadn't deleted any data from his phone since that night, but investigators discovered he'd performed a full factory reset on his iPhone just 2 days after Tanisha disappeared, effectively wiping everything from the device. Text messages, call logs, photos, browser history, all gone. Still, the movements of his phone could be pieced together through cell tower triangulation data. This technical evidence placed Marcus's phone at the dumpster location in Highland Park at 1:04 in the morning on January 5th. The phone remained stationary there for approximately 6 minutes, then began moving back toward his apartment. He led detectives to the specific dumpster where he claimed to have disposed of Tanisha's body weeks earlier. There was no longer any sign of her there. The trash had long since been collected by the city's sanitation department, compacted in trucks, and hauled to landfills. Tanisha Williams's world shattered into a million pieces when investigators told her what Marcus had confessed. He said, "My baby just died, just like that." Then he threw her away in a dumpster like she was trash, like she was nothing. Tanisha's voice broke during the press conference, her body shaking with rage and grief. Family members held her up on both sides as cameras flashed and reporters shouted questions. But the confession didn't sit right with investigators. Too neat, too convenient, too calculated. When Marcus sat down for a follow-up interview the next day, January 20th, his story began to change in subtle but significant ways. Now Marcus claimed they'd taken pills that night, not just smoked weed. He suggested maybe it was ecstasy, or possibly Percocet. He wasn't sure because his boy who sold it to him wasn't always honest about what it really was. The powerful substances must have caused Tanisha's heart to stop, he theorized. This explanation was about as medically plausible as his previous assertion, which is to say, not plausible at all. The detective conducting the interview saw an opening, a potential path to the truth. Perhaps Marcus would use the drugs as an excuse for his own actions, for whatever steps he'd taken to end his younger cousin's life. "Did you have like a moment where you didn't know what you were doing?" the detective pressed, leaning forward. "The problem with some of those pills, especially if they cut with something, is you can black out. You don't know what you're doing. Did you do something to Tanisha that you don't remember?" But Marcus wouldn't take the bait. "Nah, I was completely good, clear-headed. I know exactly what happened." The detective failed to elicit a full confession to murder. Without that admission, and critically, without locating Tanisha's body, there wasn't enough evidence to proceed with a murder indictment in Michigan. The prosecutor's office determined they had a lying case, solid, prosecutable, but murder would be harder to prove beyond reasonable doubt without a body. Marcus Davis was placed under arrest anyway on January 21, 2022, charged with 1 count of lying to law enforcement during a felony investigation. His false statements had actively deceived investigators about Tanisha's whereabouts, her health and safety, and his interactions with her. It wasn't murder, but it was something. It meant prison time. It meant Marcus would face consequences. The search for Tanisha Williams became one of the most extraordinary efforts in Detroit law enforcement history. Garbage collection trucks working the Highland Park route were tracked to specific areas in local landfills across Wayne and Oakland counties. An estimated 8-week project was launched to sort through literally mountains of compacted waste from all over the Detroit metro area, compiled over several weeks. Dozens of volunteers, mostly family members, church groups, and community activists, wearing masks, gloves, and hazmat suits, assisted by heavy machinery, picked through layer after layer of the landfill. Systematically, methodically, In brutal winter cold and then spring rain, they looked for any sign of the 17-year-old girl someone had thrown away like garbage. "We're doing what's right for the right reasons," Wayne County Sheriff's deputies announced at a press conference. "And we're going to do everything we possibly can to bring some degree of closure. Will never be complete closure, but some degree of closure and justice to this family." Meanwhile, Marcus Davis faced up to 4 years in prison for lying to police. But the Detroit Police Department, assisted by the FBI's Detroit Field Office, continued building a case for murder, waiting for that one piece of evidence that would make charges stick. At his sentencing hearing for the lying charge, Marcus pled his case to the judge. "Your Honor, 1. I did turn myself in. Yes, I lied initially, but I wasn't in the right state of mind. There was no way for me to prepare for a situation like that. I was scared. I still don't know exactly how she died, what caused her to die. I just know one minute she was cool. We was laughing and talking. She laid back for a minute. Next thing I know, she was gone, dead." The judge, an older black woman who'd seen every excuse imaginable in her 20 years on the bench, wasn't having it. "You think your cousin dies, and then you dispose of her body in a dumpster like trash. That was your choice, your decision." Marcus tried to explain his panic, his confusion, his fear of being blamed, but the judge cut him off sharply. "Stop it. I won't have any more conversation in this courtroom attempting to justify the unjustifiable. You're sentenced to 23 months in the Michigan Department of Corrections." While incarcerated at the Muskegon Correctional Facility, Marcus's phone calls home to Kiara and other family members were monitored and recorded, standard procedure for inmates. He occasionally attempted to use another inmate's PIN code in a failed attempt to keep certain conversations private from monitoring. He also possessed a prohibited cell phone smuggled in by an associate, which he used to exchange thousands of text messages with Kiara. Repeatedly in his recorded calls, Marcus would ask variations of the same question: "Anything major happen?" This seemed to be poorly concealed code for one specific thing. Had the massive landfill search found anything, or anyone? "The most logical thing right now," he told Kiara in one recorded call that would later be played in court, "is that there's nothing major. Nothing major is new. And because of that, there's like a last-ditch effort to put together any types of anything, you feel me?" His relief was palpable through the static prison phone line. "Keep your head up. Don't say nothing to nobody. Nothing to nobody about nothing." Think about that for a moment. If Marcus's story was truthful, if Tanisha had died suddenly from some unknown and non-violent cause like he claimed, then there would be every reason for him to want her body found. Finding Tanisha would corroborate his story. It would exonerate him of murder. The quicker she was found, the better for his case. An autopsy showing no signs of violence would set him free. Wishing for her discovery should also be the sentiment of a loving cousin who cared about his family's peace of mind, who wanted his auntie Shanice to have closure, to be able to bury her daughter properly. Instead, over and over again in monitored calls, Marcus expressed relief that nothing major had occurred in the search. As the final days of the landfill project approached in late March 2022, he began referring to it cryptically as that situation. "It was supposed to stop the whole situation," he told Kiara. "And since it didn't find nothing, usually there's an update or movement, but actually nothing. So don't worry about nothing." Marcus served just over 9 months before being granted early release through Michigan's special 90-day Swift and Sure program, a boot camp-style incarceration program designed like military training, where non-violent inmates can better themselves through discipline and earn early release. It had been nearly a year since Tanisha disappeared. She had not been found in the exhaustive landfill search. An indictment for murder had not been sought by prosecutors. And now the prime suspect walked free, returning to his apartment, his girlfriend, and his children. Tanisha Williams' anguished question echoed through Detroit's black community, amplified on social media and local news. "Why is this man free?" She demanded outside the courthouse. "What can somebody admit to and still be let free? He said he put my daughter in a dumpster, and he's walking around like nothing happened." Marcus Davis's freedom was short-lived. On June 13, 2023, after an 18-month investigation that consumed hundreds of detective hours, the Detroit Police Department was finally granted an arrest warrant for murder. The 24-year-old would face charges of second-degree murder as well as tampering with evidence, both serious felonies carrying potential life sentences. Upon his arrest at Kiara's mother's house in Redford Township, 2 additional cell phones were seized. And despite the factory reset Marcus had performed on his original device, investigators made a crucial breakthrough through cloud storage data. His Google search history had been automatically backed up to his Gmail account, which he'd never thought to delete. On January 7th, just 3 days after disposing of Tanisha's body in the dumpster, Marcus had performed a series of revealing searches that demonstrated consciousness of guilt. Are garbage trucks also crushers? What is the force of garbage truck machinery? How do police get your phone history? Can police recover deleted text messages? How do you know if police are watching you? Do cell phone towers track your location? But that wasn't all investigators found in the cloud data. In the 6 months before the incident, Marcus had performed numerous disturbingly suggestive searches for adult content involving taboo family dynamics and scenarios. Digital forensics experts retrieved cached results of these searches. Some were reportedly violent as well as disturbing in nature, depicting scenarios that closely matched what prosecutors believed had actually happened to Tanisha. The digital evidence painted a dark, disturbing picture of a man who'd been fixating on his teenage cousin for months, possibly years, then scrambling desperately to cover his tracks when something went horribly, violently wrong that January night. As the case approached trial, a preliminary hearing in October 2023 offered disturbing insight into the defense strategy. Darnell Mitchell, Tanisha's boyfriend, testified that he believed his girlfriend had been taking medication for seizures. Tanisha had told him she suffered from epilepsy, he said, and without her medication, seizures could become more frequent and severe. Darnell had even witnessed what he thought might have been a seizure episode once while they were together at his house. Tanisha had become suddenly faint, her eyes rolling back slightly, slouching forward before catching herself and regaining her composure after just a few seconds. She said it was nothing, that it happened sometimes if she forgot her pills, Darnell testified. The defense had found their angle, their alternative explanation. Perhaps Tanisha's medical condition led to her sudden death in Marcus's living room. Maybe she'd had a catastrophic seizure. Marcus panicked, made terrible decisions in disposing of her body, but he didn't actually kill her. There was just one enormous problem with this theory. Tanisha Williams, whose youngest child was actually diagnosed with epilepsy, testified under oath that Tanisha had never suffered a seizure in her entire life. Not one, never. Hundreds of pages of medical records covering 17 years of pediatric care, provided by Tanisha's doctors at Henry Ford Health System, supported Tanisha's assertion completely. There was no history of seizures, no epilepsy diagnosis, no anti-seizure medications prescribed. Tanisha had asthma, she'd had an inhaler since childhood, but that was the extent of her medical conditions. Why had Tanisha told Darnell she had epilepsy? That remained a mystery, though prosecutors theorized she may have been covering for fainting spells or other symptoms caused by something else entirely, something that became clearer as the trial progressed and Marcus's manipulation came to light. The trial of Marcus Davis lasted 2 full weeks in May 2004, playing out in a Wayne County courtroom packed with Tanisha's family, community supporters, and media. Marcus chose not to testify in his own defense, a strategic decision advised by his lawyer, likely because cross-examination would have exposed too many lies. The state called 32 witnesses over the course of the trial. The defense called none, choosing instead to poke holes in the prosecution's timeline and rely on the absence of Tanisha's body to create reasonable doubt. Prosecutors revealed evidence that shocked even seasoned courtroom observers who'd covered Detroit's most notorious cases. Tanisha's old cell phone, kept safe at home because she'd gotten a new iPhone for Christmas, contained months and months of correspondence between her and Marcus. Over 4,000 distinct text messages were retrieved by forensic analysts. The messages Marcus sent ranged from subtle and unsettling to highly inappropriate and explicitly romantic in nature. Wayne County Assistant Prosecutor Jennifer Hayes described the texts as pervasive, grooming behavior spanning more than a year. He routinely invited Tanisha to his apartment while Kiara was at work. "Come through when Kay at work, we can chill, just us." He offered to let her stay in his basement if she ever ran away again. "You always got a spot here, Lil, cuz my basement yours if you need to get away." He advised her on how to evade police if she disappeared. "Just turn your location off and keep your phone off. They can't track you that way." He suggested they could be more than cousins if circumstances were different. At times, Marcus was complimentary of her intelligence and looks. "You too smart for them little boys at your school. You prettier than half these girls out here, on God." At other times, his messages were probing in an immature, manipulative way. "You ever think about us being together for real? Kay been saying she think you like me. LOL, does she see something?" Marcus suggested to Tanisha that other people thought they looked like a couple. He claimed Kiara was jealous of how much time he spent with his cousin. He bragged repeatedly about how easily he could attract women, how many were interested in him. At one point, Marcus called himself the truth, slang for being the best, the one others couldn't compare to. Prosecutor Hayes concluded her presentation of the text evidence by telling the jury that the 23-year-old man had been systematically manipulating his younger cousin for over a year, that he had clear, inappropriate fantasies about her, and that on January 4th, he acted on those obsessive impulses. This was the twisted motive that led to her death. Jurors heard detailed testimony about the timeline of January 4th into January 5th. The evidence painted a disturbing picture of Marcus's actions, lies, and calculations. Marcus learned that Kiara was pregnant with their third child on the afternoon of January 4th. She'd taken a home pregnancy test that came back positive, then confirmed it with her doctor. Text messages between the couple, recovered from Kiara's phone, showed complicated emotions. Marcus expressing stress about money, about having another mouth to feed. That night, Marcus drove Kiara to her Amazon shift as usual, but messages showed he'd lied to her about his plans for the evening. He claimed he was going to stay home with the boys, maybe play video games, and watch the Pistons game. Instead, he picked up Tanisha and brought her to the apartment while his son slept. Kiara felt sick at work that night. Nausea, hot flashes, cold sweats, early pregnancy symptoms combined with the physical demands of the warehouse job. She'd been to the emergency room earlier that day for dehydration. Hours later at work, around midnight, the symptoms resumed with intensity. She messaged Marcus repeatedly that she felt too sick to stay, asking him to pick her up early even though it meant losing hours from her paycheck. The messages, shown to the jury on a large courtroom screen, were desperate. 1 a.m. Baby, I think I need to come home. On 26 a.m., I don't feel good for real. 1:33 a.m. My stomach hurt. I feel sick and keep getting hot then cold. 1:45 a.m. Please baby, can you come get me? Marcus's responses were cold, dismissive. You can make it baby, just a few more hours. He finally agreed to pick her up at 2:45 a.m., arriving at the Amazon facility shortly before 3 a.m. When Kiara climbed into the Charger, exhausted and nauseous, she noticed something immediately that she would later testify about in court. A deep scratch across Marcus's collarbone, visible above his t-shirt collar, deep enough that it had bled, leaving a dark, crusty line across his skin. Baby, what happened to your neck? Kiara asked. Marcus touched it casually, barely glancing at it. Oh, that? The cat scratched me earlier when I was trying to move him off the couch. Kiara thought it was odd. Their cat had never scratched that deep before, had never been particularly aggressive, but she was too sick to press the issue, and Marcus seemed unconcerned. Prosecutors argued that Scratch told the real story of what happened in Marcus's apartment. Tanisha had fought back. She'd scratched her attacker, leaving DNA evidence under her nails, marking the man who killed her. The case against Marcus Davis was largely circumstantial. There was no body, no murder weapon, no eyewitness, but compelling when viewed as a whole. A forensic pathologist, who reviewed Tanisha's complete medical history from birth, determined that the only conditions she suffered that could possibly, theoretically have led to sudden death were her mild asthma and an undiagnosed heart condition. But an asthma attack would present as the exact opposite of what Marcus described in his statement. Instead of quietly passing out with a faint heartbeat, Tanisha would have been gasping for air, wheezing audibly, struggling desperately to breathe. It would have been violently clear she was in respiratory distress. Marcus would have seen her reaching for her inhaler, heard her fighting for oxygen. His description of her peacefully nodding off didn't match asthma at all. As for an undiagnosed heart condition causing sudden cardiac death, while possible in young people, it was statistically unlikely. And it certainly didn't explain Marcus's behavior afterward. The cleanup, the disposal, the lies, the deleted footage, the suspicious searches. An innocent person finding their cousin dead unexpectedly would call 911 immediately. The prosecution's closing argument, delivered by Assistant Prosecutor Hayes over the course of 2 hours, cut through every defense theory like a knife through butter. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, let's talk about what we know for absolute certain, Hayes began, pacing in front of the jury box. Marcus Davis brought 17-year-old Tanisha Williams to his apartment late at night on January 4, 2022, behind the back of his pregnant girlfriend who was at work. He lied about it, to police, to his family, to everyone. Tanisha enters that apartment at 11:15 p.m., captured on camera. She never leaves through any door, but at 1 a.m., Marcus backs his car up to hide the trunk, loads something heavy into it, and drives to a dumpster in Highland Park, where he disposes of Tanisha's body like she's trash. Hayes let that sink in, making eye contact with each juror. He comes back with a fresh scratch on his collarbone, deep enough to draw blood. He's deleted his Ring camera footage. He's factory reset his phone. He's scrubbed his apartment with bleach. He's searched on Google how garbage trucks work and how police track phones. And then he has the audacity to sit in an interrogation room and tell detectives that Tanisha just mysteriously died from smoking marijuana. Hayes' voice rose with righteous anger. The defense wants you to believe she had a seizure. Medical records prove she never had epilepsy. They want you to believe it was a tragic accident. Then why delete everything? Why burn evidence in your backyard? Why move her body when police started asking questions? Marcus Davis had been grooming his teenage cousin for over a year. 4,000 text messages of manipulation, telling her to come over when his girlfriend was gone, offering her a place to hide if she ran away, suggesting they could be together. And on January 4th, when Kiara was at work and his children were asleep upstairs, he made his move. Tanisha fought back. We know this because she scratched him. But Marcus is bigger, stronger, and he had the element of surprise. Whatever happened in that apartment, it resulted in Tanisha's death. And Marcus's actions afterward show consciousness of guilt, show knowledge that he committed a crime, show absolutely that he murdered Tanisha Williams. Hayes concluded powerfully. You don't dispose of a body to avoid a traffic ticket. You don't delete evidence and lie to police if you're innocent. You don't Google how garbage trucks crush trash if you think your cousin died naturally. Marcus Davis murdered Tanisha Williams because he'd been obsessing over her, and when she rejected him or threatened to tell someone what he was doing, he killed her. Find him guilty. Give Shanice Williams and this family justice. Shanice Williams and the rest of Tanisha's family waited in the courthouse hallway as the jury went into deliberations on the afternoon of May 17, 2024. They'd heard 2 weeks of testimony, seen the evidence, heard the arguments. Now 12 strangers held Tanisha's justice in their hands. The waiting was agony. They returned in only 30 minutes, one of the fastest deliberations anyone in the courthouse could remember for a murder case. That speed could mean anything: complete certainty of guilt, or not enough evidence. The family held hands as the jury filed back in. The forewoman, a middle-aged black woman who'd taken detailed notes throughout the trial, stood when the judge asked for the verdict. As to count 1, second-degree murder, how do you find? Judge Patricia Coleman asked. Guilty, Your Honor. Shanice collapsed into her sister's arms, sobbing. As to count 2, tampering with evidence, how do you find? Guilty, Your Honor. Marcus Davis showed no visible reaction, staring straight ahead at the defense table. But his lawyer's shoulders slumped in defeat. It was over. 2 weeks later, at the sentencing hearing, Marcus finally spoke. He maintained his innocence in Tanisha's death even while admitting he'd disposed of her body. Her death was not in any way violent. She wasn't hurt at all. He insisted, his voice breaking slightly. I didn't kill Tanisha. She died and I panicked. I made terrible choices, but I didn't murder my little cousin. I loved her. Before announcing his decision, Judge Coleman outlined Marcus's failures in excruciating detail. His failure to accept responsibility for the murder, for disposing of Tanisha's body like garbage, for lying repeatedly to police and family, for causing devastating delays in the investigation, for leaving his 2 young children alone in the apartment while he disposed of evidence, for manipulating and grooming a teenage girl. Mr. Davis, in my 20 years on this bench, I have seen many defendants who committed terrible acts, Judge Coleman began. Some showed remorse, some took responsibility. Some demonstrated that they understood the magnitude of what they'd done wrong. You have shown none of those things. Throughout this process, you have lied, manipulated, and shown absolutely no genuine remorse for taking a 17-year-old girl's life and destroying her family. Judge Coleman continued, her voice hard. It is unlikely, in fact, I'd say nearly impossible, that you will ever be rehabilitated. The evidence showed calculated grooming, planned deception, and callous disposal of someone who trusted you completely. Therefore, I'm imposing the maximum sentence available under Michigan law. Marcus Davis was sentenced to 35 to 60 years in prison for second-degree murder and an additional 5 to 10 years for tampering with evidence. These terms would be served consecutively, meaning Marcus would serve them back-to-back, not simultaneously. He would be eligible for parole when he was in his late 50s at the earliest, if he even made it that far. Tanisha Williams's body trembled as the sentence was read. When the judge finished and banged the gavel, Tanisha stood to address the court through tears. When they read that sentence, I felt something I haven't felt in 2 years. Not peace, I'll never have that without my daughter, but justice. They saw she was loved, she is loved, she was fought for. And this is the result. This is what justice looks like. Then Shanice turned to face Marcus directly across the courtroom, her voice rising. You thought you were smart. You thought you could manipulate everyone like you manipulated her. You tried to be slick, covering your tracks, deleting evidence. But the people saw through you. The jury saw you for exactly what you are, evil hiding behind a family smile. And I hope you never, ever get out of prison. I hope you die behind those walls thinking about what you did to my baby girl every single day for the rest of your miserable life. Tanisha Williams's body has never been recovered. Over 70 volunteers and law enforcement officials from multiple agencies searched the landfill for nearly 6 months, February through July 2022, before finally admitting defeat. Somewhere in that massive expanse of compacted waste and refuse spread across acres of Oakland County landfill, a 17-year-old girl with her whole life ahead of her remains lost. Her family has no grave to visit, no place to bring flowers on her birthday or the anniversary of her death. Tanisha, as of this writing, Marcus Davis remains incarcerated at the Ionia Correctional Facility, a Level 4 security prison in mid-Michigan, awaiting his potential placement in general population. He'll be eligible for his first parole hearing when he's 58 years old. Given the consecutive nature of his sentences and Judge Coleman's scathing assessment of his rehabilitation prospects in the pre-sentence report, legal experts believe he will likely never see freedom again. Parole boards in Michigan typically deny release to offenders who maintain innocence and show no remorse, and Marcus has demonstrated neither acceptance of guilt nor genuine remorse. Tanisha Williams continues to fight for legislation in Michigan requiring more thorough searches for missing persons and stricter penalties for evidence tampering in murder cases. Tanisha's law, as it's being called, would mandate extended search periods and provide additional resources for families of missing persons, particularly missing Black women and girls, who are statistically less likely to receive intensive law enforcement response. The Detroit community hasn't forgotten Tanisha. Murals bearing her face have appeared in her neighborhood, one on 7 Mile Road, near her high school, another at the community center where she volunteered. Both show her bright smile, her braids, and the words, "Justice for Tanisha," in gold letters. Annual memorial walks happen every January 4th, with family and community members marching from Cass Technical High School to the Detroit Police Headquarters, demanding accountability and remembrance. This case serves as a chilling reminder that danger doesn't always come from strangers lurking in shadows or predators hiding in parking lots. Sometimes, evil wears a familiar face, smiles at family gatherings, and sits across from you at Thanksgiving dinner. Sometimes, it calls itself family, carries you as a baby, plays video games with you as a child, and gains your complete trust over years of seemingly innocent interaction. Sometimes the person you trust most, the person your mama trusts, the person who's been family since birth, is the one who means you the greatest harm. Tanisha Williams trusted her favorite cousin more than almost anyone in her life. She got into his car willingly, that cold January night, excited to grab late-night Coney dogs and talk about her dreams for the future. She walked into his apartment without a single trace of fear or hesitation, believing she was completely safe with family. She sent her boyfriend a text saying she was on her way, thinking she'd be home within 2 hours. She never walked back out of that apartment alive. What exactly happened inside Marcus Davis's apartment during those crucial hours between 11:15 p.m. and 1 a.m. may never be fully known. Without Tanisha's body, without a murder weapon, without witnesses, the complete truth died with her in that Highland Park dumpster. But the evidence paints a horrifying picture of betrayal, violence, and calculated cover-up. The forensic analysis of the text messages revealed something prosecutors couldn't present in full detail to the jury due to rules about prejudicial evidence. Some of Marcus's messages to Tanisha in the final weeks before her death had become increasingly insistent, almost desperate. "When you coming through again? Been a minute. You ignoring me now? Thought we was cool." When Tanisha started responding less frequently to his texts in late December, Marcus's tone shifted noticeably. Friends testified that Tanisha had mentioned her cousin was acting weird and texting too much, but she hadn't felt comfortable telling her mother because she didn't want to cause family drama. Darnell Mitchell testified that Tanisha had actually been planning to stop hanging out with Marcus altogether. She'd told Darnell, just days before her death, that she felt uncomfortable with some of the things Marcus said, the way he looked at her sometimes, the personal questions he asked about her relationship. She said he was crossing lines and she was going to tell her mama, Darnell stated in his testimony. Perhaps January 4th was meant to be the night Tanisha confronted Marcus, told him the hangouts had to stop. Perhaps that rejection triggered the violence that followed. The bleach-cleaned apartment, the scratches on Marcus's neck, the cadaver dog's alerts, the deleted digital footprint, all of it pointed to a young man who'd been obsessing over his teenage cousin and whose fantasy turned violent when reality didn't match his delusions. The jury saw through his lies in 30 minutes. Justice, delayed but not denied, came for Marcus Davis. At Cass Technical High School, Tanisha's graduating class held a ceremony in her honor in June 2022. They read her name during commencement, awarded her a posthumous diploma, and reserved an empty seat decorated with purple and gold balloons, her favorite colors. Her best friend Keisha delivered a tearful tribute. Tanisha was supposed to be here. She was supposed to walk across this stage with us, throw her cap in the air, and celebrate. She had dreams of becoming a pediatric nurse, of opening her own clinic in Detroit to serve families who couldn't afford healthcare. That dream died with her, stolen by someone who was supposed to protect her. The Black community in Detroit mobilized around the Williams family in ways that demonstrated the power of collective care. Local Black-owned businesses donated funds for the search efforts and legal fees. The Detroit chapter of Black Lives Matter organized rallies demanding police accountability for the initial dismissive response to Shanice's missing person report. Black women's organizations created care packages and meal trains for the family. Barbers and beauticians across the city posted Tanisha's missing person flyer, keeping her face visible in every neighborhood. When one of ours goes missing, we don't wait for the system to care. We take care of our own, said community organizer Tamika Jones, who helped coordinate volunteer search efforts. Tanisha was our daughter, our sister, our niece, and we weren't going to let her disappear without fighting like hell to bring her home. This case exposes uncomfortable truths about trust, family, and the hidden dangers that exist even in spaces we consider safe. Marcus Davis had unfettered access to Tanisha because of family bonds, because Shanice trusted her nephew, because decades of holiday dinners and birthday parties had built a foundation of assumed safety. Predators understand this. They exploit family connections, cultivate trust over years, and strike when victims are most vulnerable. The statistics are sobering. According to the National Crime Victimization Survey, nearly 80% of juvenile sexual assault victims know their offender. Family members, family friends, and trusted community members commit the vast majority of crimes against children and young people. Strangers are the anomaly. The real danger lives much closer to home. For Black families, these conversations about intrafamilial violence carry additional weight and complexity. Cultural values emphasizing family loyalty, protecting Black men from a racist criminal justice system, and not airing dirty laundry outside the community can create environments where warning signs get dismissed or minimized. Shanice Williams has spoken publicly about this, acknowledging that she saw small red flags in Marcus's behavior toward Tanisha, but explained them away because he was family and she didn't want to think bad thoughts about her nephew. We have to be willing to protect our children even from our own family members, Shanice said during a community forum on family violence. Love doesn't mean blind trust. Being family doesn't mean unlimited access to our kids. I trusted Marcus because of blood, and that trust cost me my daughter. I'm telling every mother, every parent out there, pay attention. Ask questions. Believe your kids when they say someone makes them uncomfortable, even if it's Uncle so and so or cousin whoever. Their safety matters more than keeping peace at family functions. Tanisha Williams was 17 years old when she died, just months away from graduation, from college, from the independence and future she'd been working toward. She loved music, especially Detroit artists like T. Grizzly and Babyface Ray. She volunteered at a soup kitchen on weekends. She painted her nails in elaborate designs and posted them on Instagram. She argued with her little brothers about whose turn it was to do dishes. She was ordinary and extraordinary at once, a young black woman with dreams and flaws and potential, deserving of a full life. Marcus Davis stole all of that from her. He stole it from her family. He stole it from the patients she would have cared for as a nurse, from the friends she would have made in college, from the children she might have had someday, from every moment of joy and achievement and ordinary daily living she deserved to experience. He stole it because he felt entitled to her body, her attention, her life. And when she wouldn't give him what he wanted, he took everything instead. Today, somewhere in an Oakland County landfill, Tanisha Williams rests in an unmarked grave beneath tons of refuse and earth. Her family can't visit her. They can't leave flowers or sit beside her and talk the way people do at cemeteries. They have photographs and memories and an empty space at every family gathering. They have justice in the form of Marcus's conviction, but justice doesn't fill the Tanisha-shaped hole in their lives. This story ends where it began, with a warning about trust and evil hiding behind familiar faces. Pay attention to the people around your children. Believe victims when they speak up. Question relationships that seem inappropriate, even slightly. Don't let family ties blind you to danger. And remember Tanisha Williams, who deserved so much better than what she got, who trusted the wrong person, and who paid for that trust with her life.